Hey, I want to do a quick video. I'm kind of upset right now. I have to, unfortunately, take my medicine before I go to work. Um, I don't want to particularly, but I'm not gonna have a road rage incident, so I'm gonna calm down. And but I wanted to get something off my chest, and that's basically a very, very simple path forward. I feel like it's logical. I feel like um, large language models, as they are prompted, anyway, agree with me, which is, I suppose, is about as relevant as citing a poll, considering the nature of the question often drives the answer. Anyway, a simple path forward. So we are facing economic fraud, which seems to be our only option to economic ruin, and price fixing, increasingly imposed from the top down, uh, from manufacturers to landlords to hourly workers. Everybody's getting told exactly what they will get, no matter what their individual skill level may be. And that is coming from the government and police intimidation and on and on and on through religious, state-sponsored religious circles, and through the police directly, no doubt. Why? Well, we're facing dwindling resources for a number of political and economic reasons, and I would say the underlying driving factor behind that, the catalyst behind that, is uh, both the industrial rise of China and them competing for their economic rights within a global society, and environmental change, which is driving the planning of many countries around the world. Many intellectual institutions are trying to either mitigate climate change or prepare for it in their own way. And that does extend to economics and such on a global level. And the reason is pretty obvious. The number one factor for economic prosperity is going to be energy prosperity. If you have a lot of energy, you will have a lot of money. And that's not to say that's the only asset class that is linked to a currency currently, but it is the predominant one. I would say most currencies in the world that are in, any sort of elite class are there because of an abundance of energy. And I don't want to, so this is a problem. If I say, energy valuation is linked to 80%, 90%, that might be true in America. It might be 99% in a country like Saudi Arabia. It might be linked to the currency value 85% in Russia, and it might be 20% in China. So to say that energy assets are correlated with currency evaluation in any sort of fixed percentage is not true. It's going to be state by state. And but it's up there. It's significant. I'd say global average is probably north of 70%, but if you get into really, really poor countries, it probably is 20%. And their predominant currency valuation is based on food or some other natural resource. So, or resource, natural or otherwise. So, how can we move forward in a world of climate change that's happening rapidly, security threats, AI, all that stuff? To me, it's very simple. The answer is nuclear. It's not to say nuclear is the only answer, but nuclear is the cornerstone. Nuclear is the key that unlocks the door to prosperity. Nuclear energy in many of its forms is essential and interconnected with medical research, with medical therapies, and on and on. And a lot of these reactors are also codependent on other reactors, meaning to say that we are going to be waiting for some sort of perfect fusion reactor so we don't need light water reactors or molten salt reactors is simply a false statement. If you were to at some point mass produce some sort of low mass fusion reactor, that fusion reactor would probably require a constant fuel source of low mass radioactive fuel, like tritium or deuterium, and that is going to be extracted either, well, it does exist somewhat naturally in the ocean, but you're going to want a concentrated source of that, and you're probably going to be getting your radioactive water from a light water reactor. And so fusion sounds great, but to say fusion doesn't require fission to generate the fuel that you're going to use in your fusion is wrong. You're going to need fission reactors if you're going to have fusion reactors. And from there, you can kind of imagine, well, if that's true, then there's probably several reactors that have waste products that fuel other reactors, and you'd be correct. So there's all sorts of reactors that could be used to generate fuel and then have that waste be used in a future next generation reactor. And there's quite a few designs that can utilize that. The medium temperature plasma reactors are kind of universal as far as disposing of nuclear waste, and doing so while generating energy might be not technically happening today. I do think that it is more than plausible in many fuel cycles. So what's the problem? Well, the problem has always been safety and security when it comes to nuclear energy. So where do we gain our security? And this is where we need to start putting people who aren't currently working to work. People who are currently pretending to be in danger, and put them in actual workplace danger. So let's face it, every time you do industrial or commercial work, you are in danger. And you know who's in danger or claims to be a lot, and claims to have a lot of manpower, claims to have a lot of security, and that's the U.S. military. So what we need from the U.S. military, like 10 years ago, is a training program. We need a training program. We also need energy independence, and we need mass production, and we need all these things that literally no corporation can do themselves, because legislation from the Department of Energy, from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, makes building these things impossible or illegal outside of national labs. To do so within a national lab is not going to be profitable, and probably not going to generate electricity for anybody ever. So what we need is for military bases to start producing their own electricity. And better yet, military bases should be producing their energy with nuclear energy on site, so that every American military base produces 100% of its own energy. And they can do so with experimental reactors. I have no problem experimenting on them. And while they are being trained for next generation American work, which is what we want. We don't want next generation warfare. We want next generation work. Just to be clear on the objective. So training these young Americans for next generation work on military bases that are secure from environmental and human attack, because they are producing their own electricity within a hardened infrastructure that is not vulnerable from outside people as a military base logically should be. They're producing their own energy. They are also training people to build and operate the nuclear reactors that are on their bases. And they're training their own people. And their own people, after 4, 6, 8, 20, however long years they spend working in the military, producing their own energy, clean energy, that has nothing to do with killing someone in exchange for a barrel of oil, but has everything to do with training young Americans to do hard work that will keep them alive in the future. These Americans will leave the military and they will enter the private sector. And this might take several years, but as they enter the private sector with job training. And this job training makes it much safer to continue working in the supply chain that's either currently providing the military with their nuclear reactors or with safer versions, because as we produce any technology, we refine it. As we do any job, we make a system and we refine that system. So 4 years, 5 years into building and operating nuclear reactors, anybody, I don't care who they are, is going to get good at it. So 4 or 5 years into building and operating nuclear reactors, these individuals start to enter the private sector and start to build and operate even safer versions for the American public, who are now being provided with cheap energy, cheap, clean energy. So now they're suffering less disease because they're breathing in less air pollution. The nuclear waste is being managed in a top-down style system where the waste of one reactor is being used as a fuel in the next, and eventually is being decayed into lead, because we have that technology now. We do. It's the military will have all the depleted uranium munitions they want, but we won't have glowing children. And what's left goes to Yucca Mountain or whatever. And we have physical waste instead of gaseous waste. We have a trained workforce instead of a retarded workforce. And we have a military that is energy independent, which has to be the first step. So, time to start carrying your own water. Time to start doing your own work. Time to start being the heroes you've been pretending to be. And that's the only path forward. Any other path forward that I've gamed out in my head is an immediate disaster or a joke. You can deny climate change. You can deny pollution. Dead. You're not going to be able to take that technology underground with you. You're not going to be able to take that technology underwater with you. You're not going to be able to take that technology to space with you. That technology is obsolete. You're hanging on to it because you lack job training. You need to recognize that as a society. It's not political. You can't do the job, so you hate it. Well, learn to do the job. It's necessary. The only path forward.